What's up, guys? Fati the Afghan Mystic here. I feel like there's something heavy that I want to talk about right now. Um, Considering it feels like it's the right time of year now. I feel like I've been wanting to talk about this for a while, but it's not easy. So I'm trying to calm myself and just kind of cleanse my energy right now and bring myself back to earth. So, basically, what I wanted to talk about today is grief. So, trigger warning now, because it's a very heavy topic. And if you are somebody who has experienced a significant loss, expected, unexpected, if you don't feel like you're in a place where you can handle, talking about this or listening to this right now, then of course just save this and come back to it. But if you feel like you're in a place where you can be open and you can listen and you want to, I don't know, relate to somebody's experience with grief, then just listen and relax. Um, Nothing crazy. I'm trying to figure out like the right place for this light because it's. Ooh, should I just keep it green? Well, maybe that's not so bad. It's just gonna keep changing color. Okay, that's fine. Or should I? I'm gonna put it somewhere so you guys could see my face properly. But this feels like I'm telling a spooky story, and that's not it, but that's okay. I digress. So, there's a bunch of crows flying outside my window right now. A lot of them. A murder of crows. It's also a very rainy day here in Virginia. It's super cold, it's rainy, and it's kind of a moody, vibey day. And I woke up this morning like feeling more inspired about other things. And then I was like, no, I reminded myself last night that this came up for me and I wanted to talk about it. I cannot stop looking at these birds. So, my name is Fati Shakiri. I am an intuitive psychic medium, artist, creator, jewelry creator, designer, doing stuff, just out here living life. So, today is January 10th. On January 14th, which is just in a few days, it will be the 8-year anniversary of my brother's passing. And every year I feel like it doesn't, I don't know if grief gets easier with time. I feel like it does. But I also wonder what other people's experiences are like because I'm somebody who has dealt with mental health struggles my entire life, since childhood. So, why is there literally a siren going off right now? Let's just trigger me all in this moment while I tell this story. So, I always wonder like what other people's experience with grief is, and like how they deal with unexpected losses. Obviously, I'm sure it's hard. But like, I don't know, this has been a very, very transformative experience for me. So maybe I'll just start at the beginning and I'll just stop yapping randomly. I have ADHD, so my brain wants to go in like a million different places. So on January 14th, 2018, I got a phone call from my cousin, oddly enough, that my brother, I call him my brother because we grew up together and he was the closest person to me. We are cousins technically, but to me, he's my brother. So I got a call that morning that my brother passed away unexpectedly. And it's hard to like go back into that space. I think I'm getting emotional already just talking about it because there is nothing in life that can prepare you for such an unexpected loss of somebody who is also so young. So when he passed, I was turning 28 that year, because it was 2018, and he was 20, hold on, 29? There, okay, hold on. He would have been turning 29. No, he would have been turning 30. So he was 29. I'm confused. I'm so bad at timing. It was in January, so that was before both of what our birthdays would have been. So I got a call that my brother passed away unexpectedly. He was 29 and he had been basically murdered by somebody on the street, an unhoused person in San Diego. You can look it up online, it's in the news. My heart is just like racing as I'm talking about this. So he was murdered unexpectedly by some random person on the street. They'd gotten into an altercation, and I don't know what was going on with this other person, but they thought it was a good idea to stab my brother multiple times. And he, still tried to get back into the car and try to drive himself to the hospital, but he was losing too much blood and he couldn't do it. So he had pulled right over, right across from the gas station that it happened at. And, you know, the rest is history. My sister-in-law was with him, and I can't even imagine. They had two young kids. They have two young kids who have since, of course, grown because it's been 8 years now, which is insane to me. It's just so hard talking about this experience because you go through like it's been almost 8 years, right? But it's like trauma literally lives in your body. And no matter how much work you do, I don't know if there's ever a place where you get to where talking about it isn't a jarring experience. Because right after that, I experienced another loss, literally the next year. So we'll get there. Bear with me as I try to speak through this. So when that happened, it was January of 2018. I definitely spiraled and went into a very deep, dark depression, but also I was just so confused about what reality like even was. It's very true that when you experience something this traumatic, like your brain literally tries to stop you from believing it. Like it's not true, it's just a bad dream, it's not real. But then you go to sleep and you wake up and you're just reminded every day how real it is. It's okay to cry because it's heavy. Um, and it never gets easier talking about it. Like you go through therapy, you go through grief support. I don't think it ever gets easier, especially when it comes to the times of like the anniversary of the date that it happened. It's like your body literally remembers the timing. It remembers that time of year every single year, and you know that that date is approaching. And it just takes over your entire being. And it's so hard to like not get lost in that. So, I mean, that wasn't my first experience with losing someone close to me, but it was the first experience of losing someone close to me where it was so unexpected and so early on in their life. In 2015, my grandfather passed away, and that was really hard for our entire family. But it's like, it's just so different when you know that somebody's older and, you know, their health kind of starts to decline. Like, you just know that as an elder, as like, it's not to take away from the loss because, again, like, that was still traumatic. That is still something that we live with every single day in my family. Like, that's still something that affects us. It doesn't stop, it doesn't go away. But when it's an older person, you know, like, you kind of expect that, right? Because it's like, that's life. We're born, we grow, we live, hopefully we get old, and then, you know, our time's up and we move on back to a different realm. So as hard as that was, and as hard as it still is sometimes, like thinking back, because obviously we miss him, it's so different than getting a phone call randomly, you know, on a Saturday morning, Sunday morning, I can't remember, it was on the weekend for sure, um, that your brother has passed unexpectedly, and you're just like, your brain is trying to make sense of it. You have no idea what's going on. So you know, you go in survival mode, you try to call people, you try to find out what happened, you just try to find ways for it to make sense, and it doesn't. Excuse me. So, needless to say, going through that experience was definitely one of the hardest moments of my entire life. Like, I've grown up with childhood trauma, I've grown up with a lot of hardship and things that I've experienced. But by far, this was the thing that definitely changed me the most. It stopped me from, for a long time, it stopped me from living because I was just so confused. I was like, what is literally the point? If that could just happen to somebody, you know, just so unexpectedly, like, what is the point of it all? It really, I think that was one of the most big pivotal moments for my, you know, spiritual reawakening, remembering, because at that time it was literally right before COVID hit, and you know, there was just so much that I was dealing with already, and then for that to happen, that was like one of the worst years of my life. It sent me into a really dark place. I, you know, tried really hard to keep going, and I was doing the best that I can, and it was tough because I just felt so alone at that time. Like, even though, you know, our it was our family. It wasn't just me who experienced this loss. It was my family on so many different levels, but nobody had the closeness that he and I had. And even though, like, in those years, you know, we kind of had not necessarily a tumultuous relationship. We did have a few rough patches. So we, you know, were kind of being a little distant, but we still loved each other. We still, you know, tried to check in and keep in contact. But even though we were living in the same city, like, you know, we weren't crossing paths as much, just because I think we were both, you know, in a place in our lives where we were just really living different lives. There had just been so much that went on, but it never took away from like how much we cared about each other, how much we loved each other, how close we felt. There's just always, a bond that you have with somebody who is your big brother. And for those of you who have siblings, you know that. You know that better than anyone else. So, yeah, I mean, he was always my favorite person. He's still my favorite person up until this day. But at that time, there was just a lot of ups and downs and things that were going on. And so when I got that phone call, it just like completely shattered my world because I was like, what the hell? Like he was on a good trajectory of life. Things were getting better. He had his second kid. Like it just didn't make any sense. My whole world, as well as others, got flipped upside down and crumbled. And like I said, for me, I just felt really alone at that time because none of my other cousins, like nobody was that close to him. And so it hit me really hard. Like I was really depressed. I was in a dark space. I was spending a lot of time alone, but I was also being like kind of reckless, as one does when you're going through this because you're just confused. You're like, what is the point of living? Again, if something like this can happen so unexpectedly to somebody, like, not that anybody deserves this, but, it just literally sent me into a full on spiral. And I did start spending a lot of time alone. I wasn't really talking to anybody. Like I said, this was like right before COVID hit. So I started meditating a lot. I just started spending a lot of time with myself. But at that time, the only person that was also there for me was my best friend. And he's the one who ended up passing the next year right after that. So just imagine imagine the one person that was there for you who was supporting you and just like being there for you during this hard time in your life to then also pass away unexpectedly at basically the same age as well, the next year. Insane. I feel like both of these things really, you know, sent me into a whirlwind of my spiritual awakening because I was just looking for purpose. I was trying to understand, like, what's the point of it all? What am I doing here? Why would this happen? How could this happen? It opened up so much for me. And even 8 years later, it's so crazy to me because I can literally just like think about him. I can see him, but I can't pick up the phone and call. I can't, excuse me, FaceTime. We're not making new memories together, right? Like it's still confusing in my mind because I look back at that and I'm like, was that even real? Like your mind is just shifted because obviously at one point these people were here on this planet with you. Like you didn't make that up. But then once somebody passes unexpectedly like that, it's almost like everything shifts and you're just like, was that even real? Because like how can these two things be true? Like it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me that it's been 8 years since my brother passed away. It's been 7 years since my best friend passed away. And like I every now and then will get visitations in my dreams, which I really appreciate, but they're also not the easiest. Like, I don't know, I feel like when you're so close to people, it's hard for them to come through to you. But I also feel like I have a lot of like anger, sadness, stress, grief that still like, tucked into my heart. But I do believe that first experience with my brother passing is what sent me into, what I would consider my spiritual awakening because that was the year where I was, spending a lot of time meditating. I was having a lot of dreams. It was just so hard can't even say that I got through it because I don't feel like I've gotten through it. Like I just keep trying to keep going every single day and like make the most of my life. Even though right now I'm in a confused transitional place, so it doesn't feel like I'm even doing anything with my life. But I just don't think that that's something that you ever get over. And it's hard when the people around you are also not in a place where they can talk about it, because it is true when you lose somebody, you don't want to stop talking about them. You don't want to forget them. You don't want to pretend like it never happened. It feels like it never happened because that feels like a completely different lifetime in a completely different place. Like it doesn't make sense. But you still want to remember them. You still want to talk to people about them. You still want to, talk about the memories and the good times and look at the pictures and like, keep their memory alive, not just for like their sake or the sake of it's just like it's for you to know like that was real, like that happened, that wasn't something that I just made up, like this person wasn't just a figment of my imagination, like they're real, like this happened. And you want to remember your loved ones because I feel like that's how you remain close to them in a sense, because physically they're not here. Like, yeah, spiritually, they can visit you in your dreams. They can, give you symbols and signs. And I've experienced that heavily. It was literally when I was staying with my brother's wife, like during that summer that he passed, the summer after he passed. Um, I again was really deep, like diving deep into my spirituality. I was meditating a lot. I was reading a lot. I was asking a lot of questions. And that summer, I was also moving. Um, and I started, that was the year that I got into reading tarot. I had acquired this tarot deck a few years back. I think it was the year that my grandfather died. We had all gone on like a little mini trip to Santa Cruz, like we used to. And I have an aunt that, is into metaphysical stuff. And it's so funny because when I look back on that, she's been into this stuff her whole life. Well, my whole life. And it just didn't click until the right time. You know what I mean? Didn't make sense. But that year that my grandfather had died, we had all gone on to a little day trip to Santa Cruz. And, she took us into a little metaphysical shop to get our aura photos taken. And I had acquired my first tarot deck, and then I completely forgot about it. Me and my dad had moved back to San Diego. I was doing other things. I was working. I was, whatever, whatever. And then once my brother died, and I was like packing away my stuff so that I could, move to the East Coast and help my mom with stuff, I ended up finding this tarot deck, and I was like, that's crazy. And that's when I dove like headfirst into tarot, super deep. It was just back to back to back. And I remember when I was staying with my sister-in-law, she was cleaning the house one day and I was sitting there doing a reading, and all of a sudden like I got this sensation, I got this feeling of like, once I read the cards, I was like, this is not for me. Like this doesn't even make sense for me. But then I looked up at her and I was like, oh my God, I think this is for her. And I realized that it was literally like the energy of my brother from the other side. Like the things that I was saying, the things that were coming through, the feelings, the emotions, everything was literally like communicating from him to her. And that was a year where I was just like, what is going on? And then, I took some classes and I realized, okay, this is mediumship. This is not just like, being psychic. This is not just being intuitive. Like, this is mediumship. Like, you're literally receiving from the other side. And so that sent me into a whole nother spiral because I was just like, how is this even possible? Like, what am I doing? But it just made so much sense because of other things that I had experienced after that. Somehow this all ties in together. I know it's all over the place, but if you are somebody who has been diving more into your spirituality because of grief, because of a loss, or, you know, understanding that you have been feeling certain emotions or feelings or getting messages that you can't really explain. I don't know, having a dance with death to some extent really does open you up in so many ways that you really can't explain or truly understand until you start to go down that path. I'm just going to keep talking because I don't know, I feel like God, Spirit, Source wanted me to share this. And again, it's all over the place, but you know, maybe you're somebody who is diving into your spirituality. Maybe you're somebody who is deeply grieving. I feel like those two things go hand in hand. Like, I don't feel like there's a separation because when you're diving deep into your spirituality, you're literally trying to understand your soul, your role, your purpose, like yourself as a human being on this planet because, you know, you're a soul, but you're in a human body and you're having a human experience. But there's so many things happening within us, around us, above us, below us that we don't understand. And then I feel like, I don't know, when you have one or multiple experiences with death, it changes you in so many ways. I feel like it doesn't always make sense. Um, and you start to wonder because you're like, okay, but other people experience this too, right? Like even your family members or your friends or the people that were close to you who had also experienced the loss that you did. Of course, it's to a different level, but then sometimes you wonder, you're like, why aren't they going through this? Like, what are they going through? Why is it a different experience? And I just wonder, I mean, even if I wonder, I feel like it's true. It's just how it's a catalyst for everybody in a different way because it can be a catalyst for you to change your life for the better or to dive deeper into things and to open you up in ways that you could have never imagined. But then it's also an experience that can completely close you off, alienate you. You know, you can dive super deep into your depression and literally not come out of it. And that's a tough place to be too, because I feel like, you know, we've seen not just people close to us, but, you know, even celebrities and other people on the planet who have gone through these things where it has taken a turn for the worst and, you know, they decided not to keep going. So maybe this is a message for somebody to keep going. I promise you it's not easy, and I know. I know, trust me, I truly know. Because the fact that, you know, during the time of my brother's loss, I couldn't count on anybody. The people who I thought were the closest to me were nowhere to be found. Again, it was just my best friend who, you know, somehow was able to show up for me. He was the only one out of the best friends that I thought that I had at that time, out of the people who I thought I was the closest to at that time, he was the only single person who showed up for me. There was not anybody else. Like, of course, my sister-in-law and the kids, because that was a loss that they were experiencing. So we try to, you know, stick together, and my brother's friends. But these were also people who were new to me. You know, it wasn't people that I knew. I didn't really have an understanding of my brother's life or all his friends and stuff. I really only knew his wife and the kids. I wasn't really around anyone else. And this sent me in a whole nother direction and stuff of, you know, meeting these people and dealing with all that and having my own experiences there. But at the time that I felt like I needed somebody the most, the only person that was there for me was my best friend. And then I just thought it was insane because literally the next year He passed away in the summer, um, in September, also on the 14th, but a year later. And bitch, that just threw me for a loop because I was like, what? Like this is really happening again. I was at my sister-in-law's father's house, and I remember this vividly that they were having a party and we were there, and it was, later in the night, and I get a phone call. This is why I don't answer the phone, okay? If anybody's curious, like my family, my friends, people that are close to me who try to call me, I literally, dealing with these experiences of dealing with these losses, like I am significantly triggered if somebody calls me on the phone because my first thought immediately is, oh no, who died? What happened? So if you're trying to get a hold of me, send me a text message first. Don't call me because if you're calling me, my immediate thought is something bad happened, somebody died, and what am I supposed to do? I'm working through it. But yeah, so during that summer, I got a phone call in the middle of the night that he was gone. And I was just so confused because I was like, what do you mean? Like, I literally just talked to him like a couple days ago. Like, it wasn't like, what do you mean? And that was also, accidental, not on purpose. And it was a very, another jarring experience just a year later. But it was crazy because I'm like, how did this happen? And it's, I don't know, like as hard as that was and how hard it still is because I miss them both every single day. And I miss my best friend. I miss having like the person who understood me the most to talk to, to joke around with, to just BS with, who I don't know, who was there to like have these deep talks with me, who was like the only person who really understood like my mind and my body, my soul, because we had spent so much time together. And it's almost like at that time when I dealt with that loss that I was just over it. And when people, this time, people did reach out, and I just told them, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. You want to be there? Send me memes. I don't want to talk about it. Like, I just can't even have this conversation. I don't want to talk to anyone else about this. I just want to be left alone and I want to deal with my pain by myself. Like, I can't even. Oh my God. And I think that was the year that I also ended up moving. Like earlier in that year, this was 2019. My mom also got diagnosed with breast cancer in the beginning of 2019. Um, and so I came to Virginia for a few months, came to help her go through her treatment and go through all of that. And then I left for a couple months for the summer, and I think that's when like COVID really hit. I don't know the timing of it all, but that's when it happened, and I was just like, I'm at my wit's end, mate. I can't take it anymore. Like, how much loss can a person take? I just, back to back? That's crazy. And that was the year, yeah, I think that was the year that I ended up leaving California permanently because my dad also decided to, get a place of his own, um, in a retirement community. And so at that point, I was like, okay, I guess I'm on my own now. So I moved to Virginia that year permanently. Or was that 2020? Regardless, there was a lot of back and forth those 2 years. But at that point, I was like, there's literally nothing left for me in California. Like, yeah, my dad's there and I love him so much, but he's always working and he has his own life. He has his own tendencies and whatever. And I was like, there's literally nothing left for me here. And so I feel like it was a healthy decision to make to move. I don't really feel like I really had a choice in the matter. It's just something that had to happen. And it's something my mom had begged me for years come back to Virginia, and I would refuse because I'm like, California's my home. What are you talking about? I'll never leave. And then I did leave. And then shortly after, I think it was like the winter of 2020 is when I met my now husband. Literally right after I moved here permanently. Like it didn't even make sense. Like that was serendipity. Because I was like, what do you mean? I just found my husband in Virginia of all places? Like that's crazy. I went to grief support therapy in, I don't know what year it was, maybe 21, 22, something like that, because I felt like I was still at a point where I couldn't handle it. I had gotten on antidepressants the, I think it was January, February of 2019, like right before I went to go be with my mom for her cancer treatment. Because I was like, a bitch needs help. I was struggling. I was struggling with PMDD. I was struggling with anxiety and depression. And it was just like, I started having panic attacks the summer of 2018, where I was like, I literally couldn't drive. I was a recluse for at least 3 months, if not more. Um, and then I think it was when I came to Virginia early 2019 to help my mom through her cancer treatment. I had to drive. I had to be the one who was, you know, able and dependable. And I had started antidepressants that year. And so that did actually help me significantly. I remember the day that I felt the antidepressants kick in because I woke up and I was at my aunt's house and I felt peace. I didn't wake up with anxiety. I didn't wake up with stress. I didn't wake up with racing thoughts. I didn't, like, I just woke up one day and I just felt different. I felt so much quiet and peace. And it was so, so strange to feel that after a lifetime of chaos. I was like, well, what is it like to even feel this peace, you know? So that definitely helped a bit for a while. Um, I was on antidepressants for like 6 years. I stopped taking them, I got off of them in March of 2025. So this past year, I told myself I wanted to raw dog life and try to find more holistic ways of, dealing with my hardships and my anxiety. And like, also because my medication did make me gain a significant amount of weight, which didn't make sense because, well, scientifically it makes sense, right? But they don't tell you any of that stuff. And I was like, okay, I cannot afford to gain any more weight for no fucking reason. So I just like to get off of these things and try to get myself back to a place where I can be healthy, start focusing on myself, because at that time I did need the extra help and they did help significantly for me to be able to, you know, um, go through helping my mom with her illness and then experiencing the passing of my best friend. I feel like if I wasn't on antidepressants, then I don't know where I would have been. I don't think I would have made it, truly, because those couple of years were literally the darkest of my life. And like I said, I have experienced tremendous trauma from early on childhood, okay? But there's nothing that compares to experiencing unexpected loss, and back to back at that, of two of the people that you are closest to on this entire planet. Still doesn't make sense to me. Still confused. Like I said, I did find a grief support group in Virginia. I think it was like called Grief Share. Oddly enough, it was at a Christian church, which I didn't expect, being the only Muslim going to a Christian church to find support for, grief. But hey, man, they were the only ones who had that kind of support at that time in the area that I was in, that I was looking for. And you know what? It really helped. They were really kind to me. They were really welcoming. Nobody was rude. Like, it was a very open space because we were all sharing that same pain. Like people had lost their parents, they had lost their children, they had lost friends and spouses, of course. And so it was, I do miss them a lot. I never really got to see them again after that. Like, I don't know, other stuff started picking up in my life. And so I wasn't able to be around. But I did go for a while and it was really helpful and I miss it. So if you're somebody who has struggled with grief, who is still struggling with grief, I encourage you to go find support because you can sit there and say you want to deal with it on your own, but at the end of the day, we all just want community. We want to share our pain. We want to feel seen. We want to feel understood. We don't want to hide, what happened because that's a truth and reality that we live with every single day. It's not something that just goes away. And so I find it, very cathartic and very just helpful in processing your grief in a way, that you can just be honest with yourself and be honest with others. And, sometimes you don't want to share stuff with the people that are close to you, and that's okay. But being in a community of like minded strangers who are experiencing the same thing also feels very, I don't know, it feels comforting and liberating because you're like, okay, these people see me, they see my pain, they understand it because they're going through it too. And it's just like having a different set of family, having a different set of supporters, of people that, you can share that with, who won't judge you. Not that your family would, but I think what I've experienced in my journey with grief is that the people around me are also having a very hard time dealing with it. And so much so they're not really dealing with it. A lot of people, especially if you come from, well, I don't know if this is entirely true. I can only speak to this from my experience, but there's a lot of things coming from a family of immigrants or an immigrant background where there's a lot of things that we don't talk about. There's a lot of things that we don't share. Your feelings, emotions, your thoughts, mental illness, like your struggles. Those are some of them. And then to, be in a different country and be in a different time in a different place, I feel like it definitely makes that even harder because already these people don't know how to deal with their pain, and then they have to deal with a loss like this, and it just makes it even harder. And the old ways are a lot of people just hold stuff in, they bury it deep deep inside and they don't think that it affects them, but you can see that it does. So I highly recommend finding support, outside of yourself, outside of your family, outside of your friends, if it's not something that you feel like, you're getting. Because at the end of the day, another thing I learned, going through grief and just my own experience of the people who were around me, people don't know how to be there for you. They don't know what to say, they don't know what to do. And it's not because anything's wrong with them, it's because, sorry, notice this weird spot on this tree that I've never noticed before. This is also a new perspective because when I was going through it, I was so upset at the people around me because I was like, all I wanted was someone to be there for me. All I wanted was you to ask me how I was doing and talk to me about it, or just tell me you were there for me. And none of them could even do that. Literally nobody could show up for me beside my best friend. And then, he passed away. So that was great. But I learned after talking to some people, because I was like, I don't understand. Like the times that I needed you guys the most, like, why couldn't you? Like, why? And it's because they don't know how to deal with it either because they haven't gone through it. Until you experience this, you're not going, like, okay, even if you experience this, which God forbid you don't, but we all will in life, it's just unavoidable. Even as somebody who has experienced loss, like there's not anything that you can say to make it better. There's no way you're going to make somebody feel better. You're not going to have the right things to say. Even as somebody who has lost somebody, I still don't know what to say to people because nothing you say is going to make it better. But the things that do help are showing up, showing support, just telling somebody you're there for them, taking them out for a meal, bringing them food, asking about the person that they lost, sharing some memories, literally just existing in the same room and not completely ignoring this person as if they're the plague. It could be so simple. And I think because people are so caught up in like their own feelings and their own discomfort that they avoid everything. And at the end of the day, like you cannot avoid this. It is inevitable. We are all going to experience a loss of some type at some point in our lives. And the best way, to get through it or to be there is just to be there, be present with people, show up for them. Even if it makes you uncomfortable, I promise you, they will remember that and they will appreciate it. If you just ask about the loss, even if you're curious, ask questions. Most of us want to talk about it. It's hard, but it beats, bearing the pain continuously or feeling like you can't talk to people or show up the way that you want to or be honest about it because you don't want to tiptoe around people's feelings. Like, I'm going through the loss. Why would I want to tiptoe around your feelings? I just, it's so weird to me. I feel like these are the things that bring us together as human beings and having this experience. And it's never the things that are easy that bring us together. I mean, just look at humanity, look at the way that the world is. We're brought together by pain, by struggle, by hardship. And as much as it sucks, it's still a beautiful thing to be able to build that community and to have that support and to be able to share that weight of something instead of just holding it all within yourself. I don't know. Even now, you know, 7, 8 years later, it's still not easy because again, I feel completely detached from who I was at that time. I'm like, was that real? Like, was that just a blip in reality? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. But then I see their pictures and, I talk to people and I'm like, okay, no, no, that was real. Like, we experienced that. Like, this person was here. But you have to, like, as hard as it is, there's my other girlfriend. As hard as it is, we have to find a way to keep going because for me, it's that they didn't get a chance to live this long, and I didn't think that I was going to make it to the age of 30 because they both passed away before they turned 30. So now I'm 35, alhamdulillah, going on 36 in March, inshallah. And up until now, I swear to you, I just don't think that I didn't expect to make it this far. Um, and I'm surprised and confused and grateful to still be here. But I'm like, okay, if I'm here and they're not, the least I could do is continue to live a life that is worth living, to be fearless, to do things, to create things, to put things out there, to put myself out there, to live the experiences that they never got because they passed so early. They were literally just the beginning of their lives. And they both had kids, which is also crazy to me because I'm like, imagine what that's like for a spouse who loses somebody also, and then for their kid to not have their father figure to no fault of their own. It's just something that happened. Um, and they have to live with that and carry that too. So I feel like it's really important to come together during those times and also definitely like make the best of your life. It can be really easy to let go of hope and to not want to go on anymore. Um, I've definitely experienced that. But it's never been strong enough to be like, I have this deep aching in my soul a lot. And I think it's more existential than anything when I don't want to be here anymore. I want to go home. But then I'm like, this earth is also so beautiful, and us being here is a miracle. It is a gift. And so I do my best to show more gratitude and to show up every day in a way that's authentic and meaningful because of the fact that I'd experienced this great loss, because of the fact that the people I love the most aren't here anymore and they don't have that opportunity. And I feel like they would want me to continue to create, to continue to live, to grow, to expand, to share, because I feel like that's just so important. Because a lot of people don't talk about it. I mean, we all experience grief to some extent. It doesn't just have to be death, it doesn't just have to be loss. You can grieve so many things. And I think that was something else that I learned after this all happened was that I have been grieving my whole life without knowing or understanding that it was grief that I was feeling. Grief around my childhood, grief around my upbringing, grief around, just my own well being and who I am, and just, life in general, just the loss of so many things I was grieving. And then on top of that, to grieve, a physical loss of somebody no longer being in your life, not just, oh, I don't want to talk to you anymore. It's no, they're actually gone and they can't talk to you anymore. So it's a lot. Um, like I said, it doesn't get easier. I mean, it does. I think it changes, like the flow of what you're feeling and how you feel it and how it shows up for you. I think it changes. I don't, it, so far, it's been 8 years. I don't think it ever goes away. And I don't know if I would want it to, because I feel like these are things that have, profoundly shifted me as a human being. It has shifted my consciousness. It has shifted my awareness in how I show up in the world, um, and how I want to show up in the world. But it's also opened me up so much to, different perspectives and being more compassionate to myself and then to others as well. Because you really don't know what people are dealing with or without, the death of a loved one. You don't know what people are going through every single day. So I feel like it's really important to just show up compassionately. And listen, I have road rage, okay? I have days, it's not as bad as it used to be because, like I said, I've shifted my mindset and I don't really rush to get anywhere anymore. I'm like, it's divine time. I'll get there when I get there. And I'll get there safely, God willing. But, you know, I do my very best to be more mindful when I'm out in the world dealing with people because, we're all out there dealing with stuff. We're all going through things that people don't see, people don't understand, people haven't experienced. And I don't know, I feel like it can really make a difference just showing up more compassionately and kindly to others because you don't know what they're going through and they don't know what you're going through, but maybe there's a moment where you could share that and that shifts everything too. So this was a lot of babbling. I don't even know what's happening here. I just feel like I needed to say all of that in some way. And so that's where I'm at. I'll probably post something else later to babble on some more. But, like I said, if you were somebody who has experienced grief and great loss, um, I'm there for you. I'm there with you. I understand you. And I really suggest, finding support, finding a group, um, finding ways to just connect and reconnect and, you know, help yourself through the pain because it's never going to go away, but it will shift. It will shift significantly, and you'll be surprised at, you know, where you'll wake up in a couple of years and be like, damn, that's crazy. Like, I really went through that, and it's still something that you're dealing with, but I don't know, there's something to be said for when you see where you're at now compared to where you were before, and you never thought that you were going to make it out of that dark time. And it's not to say that the rest of your life doesn't have some sprinkled in dark times, because that's life, baby. But it really does make you stronger, and it does shift how you see things, how you move through things, just how you do things and how you show up. And I feel like that's really important. I feel like that's a huge part of the human experience, is having the ability to grow and shift and to change and to, have these experiences and allow them to break you, but also give yourself the space to slowly rebuild yourself. Um, yeah, you'd be surprised. So, like, share, and subscribe. If you feel like this helped, if this would help somebody else, send it to them. I don't know. I'm just out here trying to live my truth, express my truth, share my experiences, because I never had somebody who could be there for me when I was going through my hard times. And so, to some extent, I would like to be that for others. And I try to show up in my life that way for others. Of course, I've learned a lot about boundaries, right? And not taking on everyone's shit. But if you are an empath, if you are somebody who's sensitive, if you are learning and noticing these things about you, then it can be hard to uphold those boundaries. It can be hard to advocate for yourself, or to want to show up or to want to share. But I feel like, again, it's something that's really important. So give yourself space, give yourself grace, give yourself compassion, treat yourself with the kindness and love and understanding that you would treat somebody else with if they were going through, a tough time. And if you wouldn't do those things, then I encourage you to take a step back and shift your perspective. Okay. All right. I love you guys. Take care.